I am a first-generation immigrant. I grew up in Benin. Benin is a small francophone West African country. I still remember the day my older brother walked into our room and said, "We're moving to Canada." I was 9 years old. And at the time, I didn't really grasp the significance of what he was saying. The fact is, my mother had been studying in Quebec City for the previous 2 years, and she decided it was time for us to join her. So here I am. One morning I wake up and I'm in Quebec City. Mom told me not to worry because people in Quebec spoke French.
Sorry, so you can see, so when your talk is done, press this, that's it.
So I thought, at least I'll have no problem with the language. It is my first language, after all. But then I soon realized this wasn't exactly the French I knew. So many new words and funny expressions. My first winter was both magical and a little bit painful. I still remember the first time I saw snow. Still one of the most pure moments of my entire life. But then January and February arrived. And I remember one day storming off home, going to my mom and said, "Mama, why is the air hurting my face?" You know, growing up here, one of the things that always surprised me was how little people truly knew about where I was from. I remember in middle school, a kid came up to me and said, "Oh wow, you're from Africa? Did you have a lion as a pet?" I looked at him and I said, "No, who has a lion as a pet?" And in the back of my mind, I was like, he must be thinking this is the Lion King or something. He probably had this image of me, a little African, with his lion pet, going around, singing, "Hakuna Matata." You know, this is a comical example, but the reality is even us adults don't really know who immigrants are or what their life used to be. If I ask you a simple question, which proportion of the current Canadian population is foreign-born? Now you might know it's a significant number, but you might also be very surprised to hear that the number is a staggering 22%. That's 1 out of 5 people. I mean, look around you. Look to your right, to your left, in front of you, behind you. High chances are one of you was born outside of this country. You know, a big part of the immigrant experience is about blending cultures. You know, at times you look different or you sound different than people around you. And some of my friends would ask me at times, "Oh no, what's your experience like as a minority in Canada?" And every time that question would kind of hit me, because I never really thought of myself as being a minority or different until one afternoon bus ride. I was 13 years old. I was on my way back from school. I saw an elderly woman get on the bus. So I decided to greet her with a smile and offer my seat. Now, to my surprise, she looked at me with such disgust that I felt as if I was dirty. She then looked down to the seat I offered and spit it on it. Before shouting loud and clear, "Go back to your country, you don't belong here." Now, I didn't really know how to react to that. I was 13. I felt ashamed, a little bit belittled, but it was one of those moments where all you wish for is that you could be invisible. All I wanted was to disappear so that I didn't have to deal with all those people looking at me, waiting for me to react or not react. And to be honest, that was also the first time that I became self-conscious of being black per se. Believe me when I say I did not wake up this morning, went in front of my mirror and say, interesting. I am black. You know, from that point on, I had 2 main fears. The first one, to not be African enough. You know, at times we would call home and family would joke around and call us a yovo. A yovo is a term from one of the most popular dialects in Benin that basically just translates to the white person. Now, obviously they were joking, but for me at the time, it meant that they were starting not to see me as one of them anymore. My second fear was that regardless how much I felt at home here, I would never fully be accepted. Because the color of my skin alone screams, he's not from here. he's not from here. A few years later, I was discussing with one of our neighbors, a very kind and old man who spent a big part of his life in an indigenous community in Congo. And one day, he told me this: Onel, identity is a moving target. Every experience leaves a clear imprint on you, and it's the sum of those experiences and how they interact together that make up what we like to call identity. So as long as you keep on putting cultural experiences against each other, you'll always feel conflicted. What you're going to have to learn how to do is how to put them in service of one another. It's funny, I'm a little bit older now, so some of my friends ask me, would I go back to Africa? I can go visit Benin. I could even decide for myself that I want to live in an African country. But being West African is not something that I can go back to. It is intrinsically who I am. The same way by now being Canadian, Quebecer, is not something that I have to further become. It is also who I am. And there's value in that duality. Because see, each perspective is unique, yes, but each perspective is limited in its own sense. But if I could learn how to put them in service of one another, then I could create something special. I am a first-generation immigrant, but I am only one story out of 245 million. 245 million is the number of people currently living outside their country of birth. If it was a country, it would be the 5th largest country in the world. Together, those pockets of people and cultures form what we like to call diasporas. And diasporas are much more than the dispersion of any people from their original homeland. They are dynamic living ecosystems of people. I had a friend whose grandmother was living in Colombia, and she unfortunately got sick. His parents did everything they could to help pay for the medical bill by sending money back, but they were scrambling. And my friend, who was 15 at the time, decided to get his first job at a fast food restaurant and willingly gave all the money he was making to pay for those medical bills. And every time we would talk, he would look at me and say, "This is for my abuela, this is for my abuela." This act of sending money back to a country of origin is what we call remittances. Now imagine these type of stories over and over and over again, and it adds up to the point where in 2019 alone, global remittances to low to middle income countries are about to reach 550 billion US dollars. That's twice as much as global aid. And you know what I found the most special about this number? Is the fact that its main driver is nothing else but human connection. But there's more to it. Diasporas are ambassadors. For our host countries, we become the first point of contact to other cultures, rituals, experiences. We tell you what to expect. And we give you the blueprint on how to interact with people all over the world. For our home countries, we become advocates, champions. If you're sitting at a table and you're not around, we can speak up for you and put your best interests forward. And if you really think about it, diasporas might just be the most unique pool of human experiences and human interaction. A testament to human connection that goes way beyond the concept of a nation or a country. There's a Nigerian art critic named Okri Enozor, and I think he summed it up pretty well when he said, "The formation of a diaspora could be articulated as being the quintessential journey into becoming. A process marked by incessant regroupings, recreation, and reiteration." And then he added, "Together, these stressed actions strive to open up new spaces of discursive and performative post-colonial consciousness." all he's really trying to say is engage with us. Because diasporas are here, but in a sense, we're also over there. And because we understand what it's like to be you, but we also understand what it's like to be the other. Just imagine how different our current conversation would be if we were able to put real global human experience at the forefront of our real global discussions. Just imagine how different we would treat and talk about each other. And I know it's hard, isn't it? Because we're not really wired for this. But I think there's a way. We just have to remember, in service of one another. You know, as opposed to simply looking at each other, I'd like for us to learn how to see and acknowledge each other. Instead of simply hearing, what about we learn how to listen? And what about we drop the assumptions and we learn how to connect a little bit more deeply, more authentically? You know, I shared the story of that elderly woman on the bus earlier. Let's imagine I were to see her today. Imagine the same scene. I'm sitting on the bus, she gets on. I greet her with a smile, I offer my seat. Let's assume she reacts the exact same way. You know, this time I wouldn't shy away. I would gently stand up tall and proud. And this is what I would tell her. The country I am from is one of great people, and with a culture so rich, words cannot even do it justice. It has given me values that I am carrying with great pride wherever I go. And you're right, it is my home. But as from here, which I also consider to be home, with all due respect, man, you don't get to make that decision for me. But for the record, I also belong here. Thank you.